The transport ship landed on Cora 7 with a loud hiss. Red dust flew everywhere. The sky was orange, and the sun burned hot and angry above the endless desert. This was not a kind planet. This was a place that wanted to kill everything that lived on it. Yuna stepped off the ship first. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and calloused hands. Behind her came her team. Jiho, the geologist, carried heavy scanning equipment on his back. Sora, the atmospheric technician, already had her tablet out checking the air quality. Doan, the field medic, looked around with a worried face. Hansel, the youngest of them, dragged 2 large cases of communication gear. And Minji, the pilot, stayed near the ship, checking for damage from the rough landing. They were humans. The newest arrivals on Cora-7, the mining colony, was already busy with activity. Tall creatures with hard shells and clicking legs walked past them without a second look. These were the Velk. Their bodies were covered in shiny black armor, and they moved with the confidence of people who owned everything around them. Their buildings rose high into the sky, crystal towers that caught the light and sparkled like jewels. It's beautiful, impressive, the kind of structures that made you stop and stare. On the other side of the colony, the Moral had built their homes. They were soft, wet creatures with big eyes and slippery skin. They came from a water world, so they built round domes that kept moisture inside. The domes glowed with soft blue and green lights. Also beautiful. Also impressive, and then there were the humans. 6 of them. Standing in the dust with their basic equipment and their tired faces, a Velk overseer approached them. His name was Tovik. He was taller than any human, and his shell was decorated with gold markings that showed his high rank. He looked down at Yuna with all 4 of his eyes. "You are the human team," he said. It was not a question. "You have been assigned to Sector 12, the far edge of the colony. There is nothing there but rocks and sand." Yuna nodded. "That will be fine." Tovik made a clicking sound with his mouth. It might have been a laugh. "Fine? There are no structures there. No support. You will need to build everything yourself." "We know," Yuna said. Tovik stared at her for a long moment. Then he walked away without another word. His clicking footsteps faded into the noise of the colony. Jiho moved closer to Yuna. "He doesn't like us." "He doesn't know us," Yuna replied. "That's different. Come on. We have work to do." The humans walked to Sector 12. It took them 2 hours. The sand was deep, and the heat was terrible. By the time they arrived, everyone was sweating and tired. But Yuna did not let them rest. She pointed at the ground.
"Ow."
"We dig here," she said. Sora looked confused. "Dig, we're not building up." Yuna shook her head. "We build down. Into the rock. Deep." Jiho understood first. He had seen the geological surveys. He had read the reports. He knew what Yuna knew, but he said nothing. He just picked up his tools and started working. For the next 3 months, the humans dug. They carved into the bedrock with drills and explosives. They built walls of triple-layered steel. They installed airlocks at every entrance. They put in backup power systems, backup air systems, backup water systems. Everything had a backup. Everything was designed to survive. The other colonists watched, and they laughed. Tovik came to visit once. He stood at the edge of the construction site and looked down into the hole the humans were making. His 4 eyes blinked slowly. "What is this?" he asked. "Our shelter," Yuna said. She was covered in dust and sweat. Her hands were bleeding from the work. "It is ugly," Tovik said. "It looks like a grave." Yuna smiled. "Maybe, but it will keep us alive." Tovik clicked his mouth again. That laughing sound? The Velk have built towers that touch the clouds. The Moral have built domes that sing with light. And the humans dig holes in the ground like animals. He shook his head. "Your species is strange." He walked away. And the humans kept digging. Word spread through the colony. The other workers came to see the human project. They gave it a name. They called it the Burrow. They meant it as an insult. A joke. The place where the scared little humans hid from the sky. Even Asara, the Moral representative, came to look. She was kinder than Tavik. She did not laugh, but her big wet eyes were full of pity. "You poor things," she said to Yuna. "You do not have the technology for proper construction. If you need help, the moral can assist you." Yuna thanked her politely. Then she went back to work. At night, when the others were sleeping, Yuna sat alone in the unfinished shelter. She looked at her tablet. On the screen were old records. It's very old. Records from a research station that had been on Cora 7 almost 200 years ago. The station was gone now, destroyed. Nobody knew why, but Yuna had found pieces of their data. Charts showing atmospheric pressure. Readings showing strange patterns in the planet's weather. In one report, written by a scientist who had died long ago, that said, "The cycles repeat. Every 200 years, the storm will come again." Yuna looked at the date. The last great storm had happened 196 years ago. For years before the current colonies were built. For years before the Velk raised their beautiful towers. For years before the Moral made their glowing domes. None of them knew. None of them had looked at the history. They were too busy building pretty things. Too busy laughing at the humans and their ugly hole in the ground. Yuna turned off her tablet. She lay down on the cold stone floor and closed her eyes. Let them laugh, she thought. When the storm comes, we will see who is still standing. Outside, the wind blew softly across the desert. But somewhere far away, on the other side of the planet, the sand was beginning to move. 6 more months passed on Core 7. The humans finished their shelter. The burrow was now a maze of tunnels and rooms, all buried deep under the rock. It was not pretty. The walls were gray steel. The floors were rough stone. The lights were simple and white. There were no decorations, no colors, no beauty. But it was strong. It was deep. And it was ready. Yuna stood in the main room and looked around. There was space for 300 people here. Food storage for 2 months. Water reserves for 6 weeks. Medical supplies. Tools. Emergency power that could run for a year without sunlight. Everything they might need if the world above them disappeared. "You really think it will happen?" Jiho asked. He was sitting at a table. Looking at rock samples he had collected from the cliffs outside the colony, Yuna did not answer right away. She walked over and looked at what he was showing her. The rocks were smooth. Too smooth. They had been polished by something powerful. Something that had scraped them clean over thousands of years. "Look at this," Jiho said. He pointed at a pattern in the stone. "These marks are erosion patterns, but not from water, not from regular wind. Something hit these cliffs with incredible force. Many times, the rock remembers." Yuna nodded. "How old?" "The newest marks are about 200 years old. Before that, 400 years, then 600, then 800. Jiho looked up at her. "It happens regularly, like a clock. And no one else noticed?" Jiho shrugged. "The Velk have only been here for 60 years. The Moral, even less. They did not look at the deep history. They only looked at the surface." In another part of the shelter, Sora was having her own problems. She sat in front of her monitoring equipment, watching numbers scroll across multiple screens. For weeks now, she had been seeing something strange. Small changes in atmospheric pressure, tiny fluctuations that most people would ignore. But Sora did not ignore them. She had studied storms on many worlds. She knew that big things started small. A hurricane on Earth began as a tiny pressure difference over warm water. A dust storm on Mars started as a gentle breeze. And here on Cora 7, something was building. Something far away. "Something big," Yuna, she called. "You need to see this." Yuna came to look at her screens. Sora pointed at a graph that showed pressure readings over the past month. The line was moving, slowly, steadily, in one direction. "The pressure is dropping," Sora explained. "Not much. Just a little bit every day. But it should not be dropping at all. This planet has very stable weather. At least, that is what all the reports say." "The reports are wrong," Yuna said quietly. Hansel was the one who found the final piece of the puzzle. He spent most of his time in the communication room, listening to signals from across the planet. Most of it was boring. Mining reports, trade negotiations, weather data from automatic stations, but one night he found something different. It was an old signal. It's very old. It was coming from the far side of Cora 7, from a place where no one lived anymore. An abandoned research station that had been empty for almost 200 years. The signal was weak and broken. Most of it was just noise. But Hansol was good at his job. He spent 3 days cleaning up the recording, removing the static, pulling out the human voice buried underneath. When he finally played it for the team, they all gathered around to listen. The voice was a woman, a scientist from long ago. She sounded scared. Readings are off the scale. Pressure dropping. Temperature changing. We can see it now. On the horizon, it is coming. The whole sky is dark. The sand is glowing. We cannot. The walls are shaking. Oh God, the noise. The sky is screaming. Then static. Then silence. Jiho was pale. The sky is screaming? Hansol nodded. That was the last transmission from the station. After that, nothing. They were gone. Doan, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. What happened to them? Was there a rescue mission? I checked the records, Hansol said. A ship went to investigate 3 weeks later. They found nothing. The station was gone. Not destroyed. Not buried. Gone. The ground where it stood was polished smooth, like glass. They never found the bodies. The room was quiet for a long time. Finally, Yuna spoke. We need to warn the colony. She requested an emergency meeting with the Colonial Council. It took a week to arrange. The Velk and Moral did not take humans seriously. They did not rush for humans. When the meeting finally happened, Yuna stood before Talvik Asara and the other council members. She showed them everything. The rock samples, the pressure readings, the old transmission. She explained the 200-year cycle. She told them a megastorm was coming. Maybe in months, maybe in weeks. They needed to prepare. Tovik listened with his 4 eyes half closed. When Yuna finished, he made his clicking laugh. You want us to believe, he said slowly, that a storm is coming that will destroy our towers? Our domes? Everything we have built? Based on some old rocks and a broken recording? Yes, Yuna said, because it has happened before, and it will happen again. Isora's big eyes were troubled. But our sensors show nothing unusual. Our weather predictions are clear for the next year. Your sensors do not go back far enough, Yuna said. You are looking at the surface. I am looking at the history, the council voted. They did not believe her. They called her paranoid. They called humans cowards who saw danger everywhere. They thanked her for her concern and dismissed her. Yuna walked back to the burrow. Her team was waiting. They could see from her face that it had not gone well. What do we do now? Sora asked why UNA looked at her people. Her friends. Her family on this distant world. We finish preparing. We seal the emergency reserves. We check every system twice. And when the storm comes, we open our doors to anyone who wants to survive. She looked out toward the beautiful towers of the Velk, the glowing domes of the Moral. All that pretty construction, all that impressive technology. They will learn, she said. One way or another, they will learn. That night, on the far side of the planet, the wind began to blow harder. Sand started to rise into the air. It was not a storm yet, just a whisper. Just a warning, but it was growing. It started with silence. Yuna woke up that morning and knew something was wrong. She could not hear anything. No wind. No distant machines. No creatures calling in the desert. Nothing at all. Just absolute, perfect silence. It was the kind of quiet that made your ears ring. She got dressed quickly and went outside. The air was strange. Too still. Too cold. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees overnight. Her breath came out in small white clouds. On a desert planet, in the middle of the day, other humans were already outside, looking at the sky with worried faces. Sora was running toward her, tablet in hand. The pressure is crashing, Sora said. Her voice was shaking. I have never seen readings like this. Something is pulling all the air in one direction, toward the east. Ji-Ho pointed at the horizon. Look, everyone turned to look. The eastern sky was changing color. It had been orange, like always. Now it was turning brown, then gray, then black. A darkness was spreading across the horizon like a curtain being pulled closed, and then they heard it at first. It was just a low sound, like thunder far away, but it grew louder and louder and higher, until it was not thunder anymore. It was a scream, a horrible high-pitched shriek that cut through the air like a knife. It made Yuna's teeth hurt. It made her eyes water. The sky is screaming, she thought, just like the old recording said. The darkness was getting closer, and now they could see what it really was. A wall of sand. A moving mountain of dust and rock and death reaching from the ground to the sky. It was 3 kilometers high, maybe more, and it was coming fast. So fast, alarms started going off across the colony. The Velk towers lit up with red warning lights. The Moral domes flashed emergency signals. Everyone was finally looking at the eastern horizon. Everyone was finally seeing what the humans had tried to warn them about. Panic came next. Velk workers ran in all directions. Their clicking voices were high with fear. Morals slid across the ground, trying to reach their domes. Ships in the landing area tried to take off, but the wind was already too strong. One shuttle lifted a few meters before being slammed back down. Another tried to fly east, toward the storm, hoping to get above it. It disappeared into the darkness and never came out. Minji grabbed Yuna's arm. I can send a warning beacon. Let the other settlements know what is coming. You'll die, Yuna said. Maybe, but they deserve to know. Minji was already running toward her shuttle. Get the doors open. I will be back. She climbed into her small ship and took off. The wind grabbed her immediately, throwing her sideways. But Minji was the best pilot Yuna had ever known. She fought the controls, spinning and rolling, riding the edge of the storm. Her ship scraped against rocks and flew through clouds of sand. The hull screamed as it was sandblasted. Inside the burrow, Hansal had the communications running at full power. Yuna broadcast on every channel, every frequency. Her voice went out to the entire colony. This is the human shelter. Anyone who can reach us, come now. We have room. We have supplies. We can protect you. But you must come now. There is no more time. First, no one came. The Velk and Moral still did not trust the humans. They still thought their beautiful buildings would save them. Then the first tower fell. It was one of the tallest Velk structures. A crystal spire that had taken 3 years to build. The storm wall hit it like a fist. The crystal cracked. The metal bent. And then the whole thing broke apart and flew into the darkness like it was made of paper. Now they believed. Velk started running toward Sector 12, toward the burrow. Their clicking feet pounded the ground in terror. Moral came too, sliding and jumping, their wet bodies already drying out in the strange air. Yuna stood at the entrance with her team, pulling people inside, counting heads, shouting instructions. Move to the lower levels. Stay away from the airlocks. Help the injured. Tovik arrived with a group of Velk workers. His gold markings were covered in dust. His 4 eyes were wide with fear. He stopped in front of Yuna. I did not believe you, he said. I know, Yuna replied. Get inside. Izara came last. She was carrying a small Moral child in her arms. The child was crying. Her name was Nari, and she was only 6 years old.
Please,
Isar said. Please help her. Yuna took Nari in her arms. The child was so light, so scared. Yuna carried her into the shelter while Asara stumbled behind them. Outside, Minji's shuttle returned. It was barely flying anymore. The hull was stripped nearly bare. Smoke poured from 2 engines. But she landed it somehow. She crashed it. Really? The ship slid across the ground and stopped just meters from the entrance. Mingi climbed out. Her flight suit was torn. Her face was bleeding. but she was alive. "Warning sent," she said. Then she collapsed. Doan ran to help her. He and Jiho carried her inside just as the storm hit the entrance. Yuna sealed the first airlock. Then the second. Then the third. Each door closed with a heavy boom. Each seal locked into place. The sound of the storm became distant, then quiet, then just a vibration in the walls. They were inside. 347 people. Velk. Moral. Human. All of them. Crowded into the shelter that everyone had laughed at. The shelter that was now the only safe place on the planet above them. The storm screamed. It tore across the surface of Cora 7 with a fury that had not been seen for 200 years. Sand moving at 400 kilometers per hour. Rocks flying like bullets. Heat and pressure and noise that could break metal and stone. The beautiful towers fell one by one. The glowing domes shattered. The landing pads were stripped clean. Everything above ground was being erased, but deep in the burrow, behind 3 layers of steel and rock, the survivors sat in silence. They listened to the muffled roar of the storm. They felt the floor shake beneath their feet, and they waited. Yuna sat against a wall, holding little Nari. The child had stopped crying. She was asleep now, exhausted from fear. Sora came and sat beside Yuna. How long will it last? Yuna shook her head. The old records did not say. Days, maybe. Weeks, possibly. We will have to wait and see. Sora was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Did everyone make it? Everyone who could?" Yuna thought about the ships that had tried to fly away. The people who had been too far from the shelter. The workers who had not believed until it was too late. "No," she said quietly. "Not everyone." Outside, the sky continued to scream, and the world they had known disappeared beneath the sand. The first day was chaos. 347. People packed into a space designed for 300, Velk clicking nervously in the corners. Moral huddling together in wet groups. Humans running between them, trying to keep order. Everyone was scared. Everyone was confused. And the storm above them never stopped screaming. Doan set up a medical area in one of the side tunnels. The injured kept coming. Broken bones from the rush to reach the shelter. Cuts and bruises from falling debris. Respiratory damage from breathing the sand. Di1 Velk had lost a leg. A Moral had burns across half her body from the superheated sand grains. Doan worked without rest. He stitched wounds. He set bones. He gave medicine for pain. A few Velk medics came to help him. They were surprised by his skill. "You treat our people as if they were your own," one of them said. "Right now," Dohan replied, "everyone is my people." In the main room, tensions were rising. The Velk were not used to being underground. Their species had evolved in open spaces. The low ceiling made them feel trapped. Some of them paced back and forth. Others made angry clicking noises. Tovik was the worst. He had been a leader on the surface. Here he was just another refugee. He did not like it. "Why are the humans in charge?" he demanded. "This is an emergency. We need experienced leadership." Akuna did not argue with him. She just pointed at the walls. The ceiling. The air vents. "This is our shelter," she said calmly. "We built it. We know how it works. We know how much food we have. How much water. How much air." She looked at Tovik with steady eyes. "Do you?" Tovik was silent. "When you were outside," Yuna continued, "you can be in charge. But down here, you follow our rules. Or you can leave." She pointed at the airlock. Tovik looked at it. He could hear the storm howling on the other side. He made no more complaints. By the second day, people started to calm down. The shock was fading. Fear was being replaced by boredom and discomfort. There was not much to do except wait. Sora took over monitoring the storm. She sat at her equipment for hours, watching the sensors, tracking the pressure and wind speed outside. The numbers were terrifying. Wind at 400 kilometers per hour. Temperature swinging wildly between freezing and boiling. The ground above them was being polished smooth. The surface sensors are gone, she reported. All of them. Stripped away or buried. What about the storm itself? Yuna asked. How much longer? Sora shook her head. It is not weakening. If anything, it is still building. I cannot predict the end. Jiho spent his time talking to the Velk and moral scientists. He showed them his rock samples, his erosion studies, his geological evidence. They listened now. They could not deny what was happening. One Velk scientist, an old male with faded shell markings, studied Jiho's data for a long time. Then he looked up with sadness in his eyes. We were arrogant, he said. We thought we knew this planet. We did not. You knew the present, Jiho replied gently. We looked at the past. Neither is complete without the other. On the third day, the food started to run low. The shelter had been stocked for 100 people for 2 months. With 3 times that number, the supplies were disappearing fast. Yuna called a meeting. Everyone gathered in the main room. Velk standing tall. Moral sitting low. Humans in between. We have a problem, Yuna said. Not enough food? We need to ration carefully. Everyone gets less. Everyone shares equally. Velk, moral, human, no special treatment. How long can we last? Someone asked. If we are careful, maybe 3 weeks. After that, Yuna did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Tovik stepped forward. 3 weeks? The storm might last longer than that. We will starve, Yuna smiled. It was a small, tired smile. Jiho walked to the back of the room. He opened a hidden door that no one had noticed before. Behind it was a ladder going down, even deeper into the rock. Follow me, he said. The group climbed down. 20 meters. 30 meters. 40. The air got cooler, damper, and then they reached a large cave. It was filled with water, an underground reservoir. Cold and clean and fresh. Jiho had found it months ago. He had drilled down to it secretly. He had installed pumps and filters. He had told no one except Yuna. Water for 6 weeks, Jiho said. Maybe more if we are careful. But that was not all. In another hidden room, there was more food. Emergency rations. Dried goods. Preserved meals. Enough for another month. And in a third room, there were seeds, grow lights, soil samples. Everything needed to start a small farm underground. Isara stared at all of it with her big wet eyes. You planned for this, all of it. You knew we would need more. We always plan for the worst, Jiho said simply. It is what humans do. The mood changed after that. The fear was still there. The discomfort was still there. But there was also hope. And there was respect sort of teaching some of the moral about weather systems. She used simple words and pictures. She explained how storms formed, how they moved, how they ended. A young moral named Nari, the child Asara had carried inside, sat at the front of every lesson. Will the sky stop screaming? Nari asked one day. Sora knelt down to look at her. Yes, all storms end eventually. The sky will be quiet again? Promise? Sora hesitated. She did not like to make promises she could not keep. But she looked at the child's scared face, at the hope in her big eyes. I promise, Sora said. Hansel kept the communications running. He searched for signals from other settlements, other survivors. The news was not good. 3 mining outposts had gone silent. A research station in the north had sent one final message before the storm took them. Only 2 other colonies had shelters deep enough to survive, but there were survivors. There was hope. Yuna spent most of her time walking through the shelter, checking on people, solving problems, calming fears. She slept only a few hours each night. She ate less than everyone else. She gave everything she had to the people around her. On the 6th night, Tovik found her sitting alone in a dark corridor. She looked exhausted, broken, human. He sat down beside her. His shell clicked softly against the stone. How did you know? He asked, How did you know the storm was coming? Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Humans are afraid of everything. We come from a world that tried to kill us constantly. Ice ages, volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, diseases. We survived all of it, and we learned one thing. What thing? Yuna looked at him. The universe is not your friend. It does not care about your beautiful buildings. It does not care about your technology. It does not care about your pride. It only cares about one question. Are you still alive at the end? Tovik was silent for a long time. Then he made a sound. Not his clicking laugh. Something softer. Something like respect. Your people are strange, he said again. But this time, it was not an insult. Above them, the storm continued to rage. But in the darkness of the burrow, 347 survivors waited together. And slowly, they began to become one. On the 7th day, the screaming stopped. Yuna woke up and noticed the silence. Not the dead silence before the storm. This was different, peaceful, final. The floor had stopped shaking. The walls had stopped humming. The world above had finally gone quiet. She got up slowly. Her body ached from sleeping on stone. Her mind was foggy from too little rest and too much worry. But she walked to Sora's monitoring station anyway. Sora was already there. She had been watching the sensors all night. She looked up when Yuna approached. It is over, Sora said. Her voice was tired but relieved. Wind speed is dropping. Pressure is stabilizing. The storm has passed. Yuna closed her eyes. For a moment she just breathed. In and out. In and out. They had survived. After everything, they had survived. But she knew the celebration would have to wait. First, they needed to see what was left. She gathered her team. Jiho, Sora, Doan, Hansol, Minji. They stood at the main airlock together. Tovik and Asara joined them. So did a dozen others who wanted to see. Be prepared, Yuna warned. It will not look the same. She cycled the first airlock, then the second, then the third. Each door opened with a heavy sound. Each step brought them closer to the surface. The last door opened. Light flooded in. Bright, clear, orange light. The sky was visible again, and it was beautiful. No clouds, no dust, just pure, endless sky. But the ground was not beautiful. Yuna stepped outside and stopped. She could not move. She could only stare. The colony was gone, not destroyed, not damaged. Gone. Every tower, every dome, every building, every structure that had existed above ground had been erased. There was nothing left. Just smooth, polished rock stretching in every direction. The storm had scraped the land clean. Like a god had taken an eraser to the world and wiped it blank, where the Velk towers had stood. There were only shallow grooves in the stone. Where the moral domes had glowed, there was nothing at all. Ships, equipment, roads, signs of life. All of it had vanished, except for one thing. In the center of the emptiness, rising from the polished rock like a defiant fist, was the entrance to the burrow. The heavy steel doors were scratched and dented. The outer walls were scarred and pitted, but they were standing. The shelter had survived. Tovik walked out behind Yuna. He looked at the devastation with his 4 eyes. For a long moment, he did not speak. Could not speak. Then he turned to Yuna, and he did something no Velk had ever done for a human. He lowered his head. He folded his arms across his chest. He bent his legs slightly. It was the Velk gesture of profound respect. A gesture reserved for heroes. For saviors. We laughed at you, he said. We called your shelter worthless. We called you animals hiding from the sky. His voice cracked. We were wrong. We were fools. And you saved us anyway. Other Velk were coming outside now. They saw what Tovik was doing. One by one they copied him. Dozens of tall, armored Velk, all bowing to the small human woman standing in the ruins of their world. The moral came next. Isara led them. Little Nari was holding her hand. Isara's big eyes were wet with tears. How can we thank you? She asked. How can we ever repay what you have done? Yuna looked at the survivors. Velk and Moral and Human, all standing together on the empty rock. All alive because of an ugly bunker that everyone had mocked. "You do not owe us anything," Yuna said. "We are all colonists here. We take care of each other. That is how it works." Isara shook her head. "No, that is how humans work. We need to learn from you." The survivors spread out across the devastation. They searched for anything that had survived. Equipment, supplies, signs of other life. They found very little. Some deep storage containers had been buried but not destroyed. A few vehicles and underground garages were damaged, but repairable. That was all. H and Sol finally made contact with the other surviving settlements. 2 colonies had made it. Both had deep shelters. Both had been built or improved with human help. The death toll was still being counted, but it was already in the thousands. Min Ji, her injuries healing slowly, stood at the landing area. There were no ships left. No way to leave. They were stranded on Koro 7 until rescue arrived. "How long before help comes?" she asked. "Weeks," Hansel said. "Maybe months. The nearest fleet is far away, and they will have other emergencies to deal with." "And we build again," Yuna said. She picked up a piece of twisted metal from the ground. "We start over. And this time, we do it right." The rebuilding began that day, not with towers or domes, with foundations. Deep foundations dug into the bedrock. Shelters that could withstand anything. Safety first. Beauty later. The Velk workers, who had once built crystal spires, now learned to drill into rock. The Moral engineers, who had designed glowing domes, now studied human construction methods. Everyone worked together. Everyone learned from each other. Weeks passed. Then months. Rescue ships finally arrived. They brought supplies, equipment, new colonists. They also brought reporters and officials who wanted to understand what had happened. The story of the burrow spread across the galaxy. The ugly shelter that had saved 300 lives. The humans who had seen the danger when no one else would listen. The moment when pride had nearly destroyed them all, Yuna became famous. She did not want fame. She just wanted to build. So she kept building. She designed new shelters for every settlement on Kora 7. She trained engineers from a dozen species. She wrote guides and manuals that were sent to colonies across known space. Years later, a monument was built at the site of the original burrow. A simple plaque on the polished rock. It read, "Built by humans. Shared with all, because survival is never worthless." Below it, in smaller letters, "In memory of the first storm survivors. You trusted the ones who planned for the worst." Yuna visited the monument once, many years after the storm. She was old now. Her hair was gray. Her hands, still calloused from decades of work, shook slightly, but her eyes were the same. Sharp, watchful, always looking for the next danger. Little Nari came with her. Except Nari was not little anymore. She was a grown Moral now. An engineer herself. A student of Yuna's methods. "You saved my life," Nari said. "You saved all of us." Yuna smiled. A small, tired smile. "I just built a hole in the ground. The universe did the rest." They stood together in the orange light. The sky was clear. The wind was gentle. But somewhere far away, the sand was always waiting. The storms would always come again, and when they did, the shelters would be ready. Because that was what the humans had taught them. Not how to build beautiful things. Not how to impress others. But how to survive. How to look at the worst possible future and say, "We are ready for you." The lesson had been learned. The price had been high. But the survivors remembered, and they would never forget. Yuna took one last look at the monument. At the plaque, with her team's legacy carved in stone. At the shelters rising in the distance, strong and deep and ready for anything. "Not bad," she said quietly, "for a bunch of animals hiding from the sky." Then she turned and walked away. There was more work to do. There always was. The universe did not care about beauty. It did not care about pride. It only cared about one question. Are you still alive at the end? On Koro 7, The answer was yes, because the humans had taught them how to survive.